The corporate tools over on Fox Business had a talk here about a new Democratic plan to pay every American $2,000 a month for the remainder of the crisis. Let's see what they had to say.
So, David, I don't know whether you heard my question earlier, but I'll ask it again. The Democrats have a plan to pay everybody $2,000 a month, adults that is, $2,000 a month as a relief from this depression-style economy that we've got now. Now, you've written extensively on this kind of program. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's funny you say adults, because I think the legislation actually says 16 and over, and I don't know about you, but my summer job at age 16 was not paying me $2,000 a month. But either way, I think the issue here is that I am very much on line with the idea that we need to get supply and production going in our economy, and giving money directly to people is the least stimulative. Now, I recognize that there's a need for a safety net. There are people who are hurting and are unemployed and need access to cash, and I believe that's what our unemployment system is for, which they've put up to $600 a month on top of the state benefit. So there are already safety nets in place for some of those things. This direct injection of cash, I think, is the least stimulative of all the things we could be doing to help this economy.
David, I think it's a case of never letting a crisis go to waste. This is the way that those who want a universal income plan get it through the side door during the virus crisis. I don't think it's going to happen. Do you?
I do not. No, I don't think that they would even have the votes in their own party, but I agree with you. That's exactly what this sort of token gesture is intended to do.
Look at how they talk about this versus how they talk about the bailout for mega corporations. He just said, Stuart Varney just said, this is an instance of never letting a crisis go to waste. So in other words, like, oh, they're exploiting this crisis to get this pre-existing agenda implemented. Actually, that's what you guys do, and that's what you've done for every single crisis in modern American history. That's exactly what happened with the Wall Street bailout in 2008, 2009. That's exactly what's happening with this one, where we did a $4.5 trillion bailout where you let corporate America loot the Treasury, few to no rules to make sure that we prevent abuse. You have companies like Boeing taking bailout money and then turning around and immediately laying people off. I mean, it's like we live in Groundhog's Day, and the thing that we see over and over is corporate America fleecing us. So what he just accused lefties of doing, and actually it's not just lefties, what he just accused regular people of doing is like, you're trying to not let this crisis go to waste. That's what you guys have done every step of the way. And by the way, Stuart Varney wasn't going out there giving impassioned rants against the bailout of corporations. What happened, Stuart? This is a guy who all the time rails against big government, rails against, higher taxes, and here's an instance of, he rails against socialism all the time. Corporate socialism through and through. Let's let the richest people in the country loot the Treasury with no consequences, privatize the profits, and then socialize the losses. And Stuart Varney's like this. Let's try to find the few ideas that are out there to help regular people and attack those ideas. Just so you know, this is who Stuart Varney works for. Now you see it. Now it's right in front of you. Now there's no denying it. He's not against socialism. He's against socialism for regular people. He's for corporate socialism. He's for the wealthy looting the Treasury. Any ideas that would help you? Beyond the pale. Beyond the pale. Now, by the way, they're framing it as like, oh, it's a Democratic proposal. It's only Democrats who want this idea. Wrong. That's not true. When it comes to universal basic income, a lot of right-wingers want it too. Why? Well, Milton Friedman spoke about this because usually the way that we have a social safety net, that we have the government involved, is with these very complex, convoluted, means-tested programs that you have to jump through hoops in order to get access to them. And the idea from right-wingers is you can reduce the administrative state, you can reduce the size of government, and replace it with a simple check you cut to people. So in other words, get rid of, this is the right-wing argument for it. This isn't the left-wing argument for it, it's the right-wing argument for it. Get rid of all these different, alphabet, acronym, social safety net programs. Get rid of all of them and just replace it all with a simple check that you cut to people. And this way you reduce the size of government. You could reduce the size of government. You don't need to hire 1,000 people to, administer the social safety net and have all these different programs. You can get rid of all that and just cut people a check. So that's why many right-wingers are in favor of it too, because you can reduce the social safety net and replace it with a check. Now, listen, and a lot of lefties, we're not trying to get rid of the social safety net. If anything, I'd like to beef up the social safety net, but I would like to do a UBI on top of it. So that's my left-wing, version of a UBI. But even if there was some sort of compromise where it's like, okay, you can have the UBI, but we are going to reduce the social safety net, but the amount of money that you'll get in UBI will be above and beyond what you were getting with the social safety net, well, then I'm open to that conversation because you're helping people more. You're giving them more money than they would have gotten from the social safety net. But point is, they're framing it as like, it's only a left-wing idea, kooky Democrats kind of this. No, there's plenty of right-wingers. Tom Cotton was one of the people who was pushing for direct cash payment to people. Mitt Romney was pushing for direct cash payment to people. It turns out this is one of those ideas, like ending wars, that has genuine ideological overlap. That you can get people all over the spectrum who are like, I like that idea. So, and talk to a libertarian, they'll explain to you, because some libertarians are in favor of this as well, just a different version of it. So they could all give you, people have different spins on it and different, nuances and details that separate the version of UBI they support, but a lot of people support it, and there's no better time to do it than in a crisis where it's desperately needed. Now, here are the parts that were the craziest to me. One of the first things that they say is, well, I think we got to get supply and production going. But that's the problem, is we can't do that in a pandemic. That's the whole point. The whole point is we can't get supply and production going because we're in a pandemic. People can't go to work. You can't have things go back to normal as, people are dying and a virus is ripping through the country. So what do we do in lieu of that? How do we fill that gap? So he brings it up casually as if it's like, well, this is what we have to do. Yeah, but we can't. That's the point. So how do we fix that? And then the worst part was, he goes, I've looked at all these proposals, and I think giving cash directly to people, that's the least stimulative move you could make. Excuse you? People desperately need the money. You know what they're going to do with that money? They're going to buy food. You know what else they're going to do with that money? They're going to pay whatever bills are still yet to be frozen, which people need that money to pay many of the bills. Thankfully, like student loans are temporarily waived, but, you got a lot of major bills that people still have to pay. So people need the money. You know what they're going to do? They're going to immediately spend it. So not only is it not the least stimulative thing you could think of, it's the most stimulative. It's guaranteed to be spent. So, listen, these guys who are on this network, they portray themselves as these financial geniuses. They're not. This is just the propaganda arm of corporate America and the stock market. And that's why you've seen like that now famous screenshot of CNBC where it said like record number of people unemployed, and then right above it on the screen it showed Dow has its best week ever. Like, this is what we're talking about here. These people are much more concerned about the Dow and the stock market and the shareholders at the major corporations and the executives and the profit margin. This is what they care about much more than they care about working people. And that's obvious because they're heaping scorn on one of the genuinely bipartisan ideas that absolutely would help people in this crisis. And that's why I told you guys, universal basic income, or as I call it, Social Security for all, that has now hopped the list. I have a list of the issues that, are most important in my mind. And this is now in my top 5 because you see in this pandemic, it is the most direct, clear way to help people and help them now. So I think it's absolutely necessary. And it says a lot that these financial propaganda networks, this is one of the ideas that they're going out there and saying, no, definitely not that. Definitely don't do that. Definitely don't do that. That means you should do it.